Well, I'm at the bench, and it's time for an Arisaka update. And this Arisaka update is a range report. It was the first time out with the second Arisaka Type 99, the one that was in another Arisaka update. And its last three digits are 352, so I kind of have labeled its range card 352 here. So in the last time I talked about this video, I mentioned being a little worried about the headspace, a little worried about the barrel. So I went back and looked at some notes on the first Arisaka, number 155, the Type 99. When I was doing headspace testing on it and closing on brass with some tape for spacers to see what it would close on and what it wouldn't close on, the number where it started to close on things was smaller than 1.932. So it did close. It was a go on a 1.9315 referenced case. It was a go on a 1.930 case. It was a no-go on a 1.9325, and it was a no-go on a 1.9320. So somewhere on the order of 1.9315 to 1.9320 is what it will close on with a little bit of friction. Well, I did a similar test on the 352, and what it would close on was very similar. It would not close on 1.9345, which of course that's quite long. It would close on 1.9305, which is very similar to what the other one would close on. So it's and a 1.9225, obviously it closed on that because it was smaller. So it really wasn't as different, as I thought it was. As far as the go, the other one would go on a 15.9315. This one was a go on a 9305. So I didn't have anything really in between. So what I ended up doing is I made some brass for the rifle. And I started out with 270 Winchester brass. I made 5 pieces. And I annealed it. And then I trimmed it to a length that was appropriate for forming. I gradually brought the neck up to size with a couple of different dies. And then I finally ended up sizing it in the over here, the 7.7 Japanese dies, the Lee Pacesetter dies. I used the full-length sizing die. And I used at first the Reading Competition shell holders here. I started quite long, and I used the plus 10 thousandths shell holder, and it would not close on that. I tried the plus 8, it would not close on that. So then I ran, I was doing all of these at the same time. I did each operation to each one, so I wasn't just beating on one case over and over. Finally got it down to the plus 6 thousandths, and it would close with a relatively firm bolt close. So I left the brass at that size, and I used the same load that worked well in the 155 Type 99. I settled on the H380 and the 170 grain Hornady round nose interlock, and that ended up being a powder charge that was 4.60 on my Uniflow powder measure, and that came out to be about 43.2 grains. So I ran 5 of them, and these are the pieces of brass. There's nothing remarkable about them at all. It looks like it formed the shoulder pretty well. It looks like all of my other 7.7 Japanese cases. They extracted very nicely, and being that this is a 473 head, it's a little smaller than a standard 7.7 Japanese, and sometimes you'll see when it's like 7.65 Argentine, you sometimes can get a little bit of swelling just ahead of the case head, and I can feel a little bit there, but it's nothing serious. These were cases that were in very good condition before I ran them. So they're not prone to having a separation or anything. They're in good condition, and I don't see anything at all to worry about on this brass. So I figured I'd look it over real close, and feeling the primers, I must not have had too much pressure because I can feel that the primers backed out to take up the headspace just a little bit as it fired. And I figure what I can do is I can decap them, measure them with a comparator, see what they look like now that they've all been formed. But as far as how it did for the first 5 shots at 100 yards, this is what I got. I believe this was the first shot, but I lost track after that. I was just on the iron sights at 100 yards, and I'm not going to complain at all about that for a rifle that I was very concerned about the barrel. The barrel feels like it's a little bit worn just ahead of the chamber, and it feels like it's a little bit worn about an inch and a half from the muzzle. When I run a patch through it, I can feel the resistance change in those two areas. Looking at it visually, it's a difficult bore to judge because they have the odd sort of polygonal rifling in them. So, it doesn't have the nice sharp edges that we're used to, but I think the rifle's going to be fine. I'm going to load some more ammo for it. I didn't want to start. I've got another bag of 50 pieces of brand new brass. I didn't want to commit those to this rifle until I knew it was going to be healthy. So I think what I may do is I may go ahead and measure and reload these 5 and run another 5 rounds through it with the same load and just see how it acts. Maybe just touch these with an X size die. You can use the 303 British neck size die if you use a spacer beneath it to push the collet up correctly. So that's probably the plan for right now. So let's go ahead and decap those and see what we can do about getting them measured to see what the reference dimension is on them. This is the 7.7 Japanese seating die. It was still in the press from when I made that ammo. Like I said, this was made from 270 brass. You could use anything that's long enough with a 473 head. You could use OT6. That would work fine. I just use 270 because I have a lot of it. And I did, on the other rifle, take a fair amount of headspace reference dimensions with the 375 comparator insert to see what that one was sized like. So we'll do the same on this one. I'm trying a new setup here with a different camera. Instead of recording with a GoPro or the iPhone, I'm actually recording with a webcam, and I'm just capturing it on the computer on the fly. I don't know how well this is going to work, but for working at the bench, it's a much better setup that I can just leave set up so I have a nice view of the bench. It'll work fine for live streams when I do that. So if you've got any feedback on the audio levels or the color, I've got a little bit of tweaking in there. This webcam is treating me better with my LED lights than my other one, so I'm happy about that. Alright, well, let's see what we've got here. I'll zero this out. Make sure the knobs are tight here. Yep, that's pretty close. We'll run it right there and see what we've got. .9270. Well, that was a little longer. 1.9340. Now one of them, I didn't write it down, had a different primer because I had some odd primers and I was using them up. So 4 of them are with CCI, with a CCI 200, and 1 of them is with a Winchester. 1.9325. Now this brass was annealed right before it was full length sized, so I would guess that after that first forming it may have not had spring back like you'd normally see, so it doesn't surprise me that these numbers are a little wild. 3, 4, 5. And let's see what the last one is here. I don't know why I put the comparator together this way. Usually I put the insert on the top and the anvil on the bottom. 1.9335. Okay, so some real quick measurements. Let's go ahead and just average those. 1.9270 plus 1.934 plus 1.9325 plus 1.9345 plus 1.9335. Divide that by 5. So our average is 1.9323. And of course, that last digit, it's insignificant. The tool's only rated for a thousandth. So I mean, those four digits doesn't mean anything. So 1.932-ish. If we look at where this other brass was after firing, PPU, this was PPU brass, a little different. They were roughly fired 1.924. Here's some 926, 925. So these are, on the order of 4 thousandths more or thereabouts. I think that's pretty much about what I expected. So here, 926, 9215. I didn't do a good job on these notes because I am not 100% sure if this was after they were fired or after they were sized, because it says lead number 2 full length size. That might be after they were sized. Do I have a fired dimension in here somewhere? Yeah, here we go. This was new. This was new PPU brass, was 9235, 9230, average about 1.9228, 1.923, right in that range. Let's grab, here's some that I fired. The Norma stuff that I was testing with, roughly 1.923. So, both of these rifles are pretty close, within a couple thousandths. Let's grab a couple pieces of that resized brass. Maybe I can determine if those numbers were after I sized them. Let's just pick a random one here and see where these have been full length sized, and I wasn't really hitting them real hard with a die. I was just catching them enough to convince myself something was happening. 1.9265. So I think these numbers that I wrote may be after they were full length sized. So I'm not 100% sure exactly what they were when they came out of the chamber, but the two rifles are going to be very similar, because this stuff, after I just touched it with a die that was not fully closed, just enough to just touch the shoulder a little bit, so I don't think that this second rifle has an unhealthy chamber, even though the action and the bolt are a mismatch. It was changed at some point in time. I'm pretty comfortable. It's in the ballpark. It's, I thought it was a little bit longer headspace than it really is. It's very similar to the other rifle. Like I said, these fired ones are, on the order of, 1.93-ish, a little bit more. And I think that's pretty similar to what the first rifle was too. 1.926 rounded up to 2.3. 1.926, yeah, 1.9236. But yeah, so it's, they're all in the 1.93 realm. So here's a piece of normal brass that I fired. Came out 1.928. It was 1.928 when it went in. 1.9275 after fired. The second piece was 1.928 after fired. So yeah, this second rifle, this 1.9270, that first one, that's a little suspect. I think was it this piece? Let's measure it again. So I think the chamber is about 4 thousandths, 5 thousandths, 1.927. That's what it measures. Just the shoulder didn't form quite the same on that one probably. And after one firing, they're not fully shaped to the chamber. So comparing the first rifle to the second rifle, they are in the same ballpark. We have, they say the 1.9275 roughly. The one grew a thousandth after it was fired. The other one shrank a half a thousandth. That you can't even measure that. Dirt will happen there. So let's just say they're 1.9275 for lack of a better thing. 1.9275. So we can take our 1.9323 that's already on the calculator minus the 1.9275. I say you're roughly 4 or 5 thousandths difference between the two rifles. When I first checked the second rifle, I was thinking it was on the order of maybe 8 thousandths bigger. It's not. It's at the most 5 thousandths bigger. that's within any tolerance of sizing brass that you'll run into. Not a problem at all. I don't know that I may keep separate floats of brass for each rifle, but they could run the same cases without any problem at all. The key thing on these is to just not overstretch them. You know, you don't want to overwork them with each sizing. So if I can find a happy medium that chambers nicely in both of them, I may just choose to make all the brass the same. I think what I'll do is I'll just, say, neck size this formed brass that was made from 270 and run it a couple more times. You know, I can even reload them at the range with the, I've got a 7.7 Japanese Lee loader over here. So I could even reload them at the range with the Lee loader and run a few times through them and get them blown out real good. I think they're probably still pretty soft after the annealing, so I think that'll be the plan. I think I'll just brush the necks, clean the primer pockets, give them a quick neck size with the collet die, and go at it again with the 4.6 out of the Uniflow thrown charge, which ends up, like I said, that comes out to be what, 40, I guess at 43.2-ish. Yeah, 43.2 or thereabouts. And both the rifles are shooting pretty well there. It's a down towards the low end of the range with H380 and 170 grain bullet. I also picked up a box of these inexpensive Spear Hot Core. It's 180 grain round nose, very similar to the Hornady Interlock, a little less expensive. So I may run some of these and see how they act. So that's the plan. That's the Arisaka update for today. I see my head go in front of the camera a little bit there. You can see my messy hair. But I want to try this new setup a little bit. I'm hoping to film some videos over here at the bench and also live stream from this setup. I'll talk to everyone soon.